Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee Lavallee Mckenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about navigating change. And it's spring right now, and I had a recent opportunity to go to New York City, and Central Park was in full bloom. I was pretty astounded at how bike-friendly Manhattan is. These cool city bikes you can rent everywhere. I actually got more cardio exercise in Manhattan than I usually do in my regular life. And although I grew up in the Boston area with a solid 4 seasons, I've lived in San Francisco for the last 23 years. And the temperate Mediterranean climate here, it's almost always between 50 and 65, at least in my neighborhood out in the outer Sunset. And although there's definitely seasonal changes, they're completely out of sync with what we think of spring, summer, fall, winter. None of the native plants lose their leaves at all. Spring and fall are both gorgeous, clear, and sunny. Summer, at least in my neighborhood, is freezing cold and foggy. And winter, when we aren't in a drought, is maybe about 10 or 12 weeks of rain. It rarely dips below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and spring starts the first week in February. All the cherry trees bloom. And spring kind of lasts from February through June or late May. It was very disorienting for me when I first came to live here because I've always been very connected with the elements. And one of the first pieces of work I do with my clients and students is to connect them with the elements because we are all children of nature. And in my work, all things have consciousness, including the larger currents, archetypes, or formations like the seasons. And I use the term elements to encompass a very wide continuum: earth, sky, sun, moon, water, wind, tree, rock, rain, fog, snow. And rain, fog, and snow are the different aspects, phases, or seasons of water. And each of the major elements has multiple faces or expressions. The thousands of varieties of tree, myriad expressions of rock, all the different environments and compositions of earth. And although we may not directly experience the changing nature of the sun or the moon themselves, because those cycles are way bigger and longer than we could even conceive of, just like the life cycle of a rock is incredibly slow, but they do have a life cycle. We do experience the continual changes of the moon and the sun every day. The moon is in a different phase each night, and the sun is in a slightly different place and rises at a different time, not only every day, but in every place on Earth. And I consider nature to be our most obvious and primary teacher. And I think that most of the problems that we have as humans, at least as modern humans, is that we've lost the ability and humility to align ourselves with the larger life force directives, the cycles and wisdoms that actually have tremendous influence in guiding our life circumstances. And I think the modern ego and intellectual self wants to try to supersede those cycles, to control them, to try to operate outside of the natural laws. And in the long run, I don't think that's going to work very well. And there's a very natural feedback loop within this larger, incredibly intelligent system that anything that is unsustainable will not be sustained. There's a lot of fear and concern these days about destroying the earth. And I will tell you, I have absolutely no concern about us destroying the earth. It is arrogant to think that we are strong enough to be able to do that. The life force is immutable, and the creative healing capacity and the infinite perpetual movement and evolution of all things, the unfathomable complexity and creativity of the larger consciousness system as it makes itself manifest in the physical world, it's not only undestroyable, but it actually includes us inseparably from this constantly unfolding cosmic process. We are a part of what's happening. One of my favorite teachers, David Hawkins, says, "The universe is one single event happening all at the same time. And that event is a verb. We are a verb, constantly becoming. And the more we can surrender to and align ourselves with these complicated evolutionary cyclical processes, then the more abundant, the more fulfilling, the more grounded and enjoyable our life experience will be. That if we really pay attention, everything is in constant change. It's either growing or decaying, devolving into chaos or being reordered. And just like each of the seasons has its purpose, creation and destruction are equally important. The only two things that every human being has in common is that we will be born and we will die. And that's not a design flaw. And the destruction, the decay, the death part, interesting that those are all D's, that's the part that Western culture wants to avoid. It's scary. Most of our expressions of death culturally are violent, frightening. Horror movies, murder stories. Very few people have spent time with a dead body. It's actually quite peaceful, mysterious. When the life force of a person crosses over, and all that's left is the meat suit they walked around in. I wish more people could have that experience because it actually does a lot to dissolve the fear of death. Growing up just south of Boston, very Irish, Italian Catholic culture, we had a wake for everyone who died. And in San Francisco, I've been to very few. Frequently, the corpse of the dead is whisked off to the crematorium, made into ashes. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, my daughter told me that she wants to cremate me because she thinks gravestones are creepy. I actually kind of like them, but I'll be dead. It doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want. I have to tell you, I actually kind of like the idea of what they call a sky burial, where they put your body someplace and let the carrion-eating creatures eat you up. But I can't imagine that's legal anywhere in the Western world. And again, I won't need my meat suit so they can do whatever they want with it. But there's a great value in being with death, making peace with it. I think that can be a lifetime of work, even if the lifetime is short. I have a dear friend whose 7-year-old nephew died of brain cancer a few years ago. It actually kind of destroyed the family. And that little boy at the end of his life knew he was going to die, and he was actually comforting the adults. It's okay, Mom. I'm going to go and be with God and Nana. And my friend asked if I would track his spirit after he died. And I was shown that Nana did come for him, and 2 angels as well. And they walked him lovingly through that doorway into the other side. And I wasn't able to be there in person. And when my friend reported this to some of the family members, one of the other aunties broke into tears, and she said, I felt that. I saw these 3 balls of light that came when Brady died. And it's through observations and affirmations like that over and over that it seems fairly clear to me that although death is the biggest transition and change that we experience after birth, it is absolutely a continuum and not an end. That everything is a continuum, and that is what nature teaches us about change. And one of the great noble truths of Buddhism is that the roots of suffering are attachment and aversion. And I think the biggest attachments and aversions that we have, I know this is true for myself and I see it in almost everyone that I work with, is a deep distrust or fear or misunderstanding of these larger seasons, cycles, and evolving systems of which we are an intrinsic part. We want to stop the presses, freeze the calendar. When things are good, we don't want them to change. When we love someone, we don't want them to pass. We may be devastated when a relationship ends, when we lose a job, when we have a traumatic injury or health crisis, or a terminal diagnosis, when our children leave home, or it's time for us to move. And again, nature is our teacher in how to navigate change. And feelings and emotions seem to be part of how we digest and grow through these experiences. And allowing ourselves the full expression of our feelings, whatever those are, I think is an important lubricating process. But as I sat with the cherry trees in Central Park, I felt myself like a student of those trees, to grow deep roots and be nourished by the earth. to spread my branches toward the sun, that my leaves may receive the warmth and nourishment that's always available to me, that the tree and myself are a relationship of interbeing. The tree provides oxygen, and I, in turn, supply carbon dioxide for photosynthesis that nourishes every cell of my body with a return of new air. And the beautiful little pink flowers that burst forth from barren branches to be worked upon by bees and wind and rain and insects. And the petals fall away, the flowers die, and fruits begin to form, and leaves bloom, and the fruit becomes ripe and fat and falls to the ground to compost and nourish the earth, to be eaten by squirrels or other creatures, or perhaps to grow other trees. And when that cycle is done, the leaves will fall, the branches become barren, frozen, and dormant, which is a really healthy, natural, necessary part of the process for many trees. The sap for Vermont maple syrup will not flow in Florida. And so does the tree grieve or rejoice in those cycles of change and becoming? I don't know. But as humans, we do have that choice. There's what we want from life, and there's what life wants from us. And do we approach great change with grief and attachment and aversion? Or can we participate in this ever-unfolding flow with gratitude, with optimism, and with trust? And I think the most profound thing that I've heard recently is that you are safe, even unto death. You are safe. And so I wish you courage and wisdom to align yourself with the changing flow of your own life and the co-creation of what you want and what the life force wants from and for you. And we are interdependent in this unfolding cosmic process, and the universe rises to support us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. And so I wish you well in navigating change. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, consider leaving a good review if you listen on iTunes, or 5 stars on Spotify. Brings it up in the ratings, makes it easier for other people to find. If you'd like some help navigating the changes of your own life, we can set up a free 30-minute discovery call. Shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. Check me out on Insight Timer. I'm doing lots of free workshops every week there, waiting for approval to upload a digital course on healing trauma. And you can find me on Instagram @Renee Lavallee Mckenna. And if you want a free download of my book, Allies and Demons, Working with Spirit for Power and Healing, and the accompanying guided audio, there's a link in the show notes. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee Lavallee Mckenna for Spiritual Psychology.